February at the movies saw Zac Efron get freaking jacked to play Kevin Von Erich in the much heralded The Iron Claw. But as we get kicked off here on the latest edition of month at the movies, I still haven't figured out an overall because we can't call it at the movies because that was like Roger Ebert's old movie show, and we're kind of doing an homage to it here. But like, we can't call it at the movies, but it does change it. It's February at the movies, okay? And as we get kicked off here, myself, Jared Leggett, and Tom Pot of the Pop Cup Pod. How do you say that quickly? Tom, what Hollywood actor would you like to see play a wrestler? And who's the wrestler as well? Look, we're on the old low blows feed. We've a lot of old low blows heads listening, so I'm sure this is something that a lot of people have been thinking about since we saw the Iron Claw.
Well, I have picked more than one wrestler
Love
because
it.
I know
Same.
I don't have just an actor in mind. I've got a story in mind.
Okay.
Okay, because we're like in a wrestling movie renaissance. The Rock is making a Ric Flair movie. We just had the Iron Claw. I'm all in on this. So I'm like, what about the rise and fall of ECW? Let's get an
Ooh.
extreme cinematic universe going like that because that's what we need. So naturally, Paul Giamatti is playing Paul Heyman because,
Nice.
not just because he'll remember his name, but also because there's a bit of a similarity there. I don't know who that's more offensive. It's probably offensive to Paul Giamatti to say he looks like Paul Heyman more
Little
than the other
bit.
way around. So,
Yeah.
somehow. Then we're going to have the genocidal, homicidal maniac Sabu is going to be played by Pedro Pascal.
Oh, love it.
Mm. We're going to have the Dudley Boys. Paul Walter Hauser is going to play Bubba. Brian Tyree Henry is going to be Devon. Telling you,
Yes.
it's coming together. This is where it goes a little bit like, I don't know. I picked some of them for very specific reasons.
Okay.
Okay. Jason Momoa is going to play Rob Van Dam. I guess he's got the long hair. It's probably a real compliment to have Jason Momoa play him because Jason Momoa is probably more ripped than Rob Van Dam ever was.
I'd say
Just get John Claude Van Damme because you only get a chance to make that happen once.
that's fair. That's fair. I'd say Rob RVD would be very happy with the Jason Momoa
Yeah, it's a bit
casting.
of a
Yeah,
it's a bit of
yeah,
a glow up, all right. Yeah,
yeah.
here's someone who would also probably be, and I'm assuming this person would win an Oscar soon, so he might not want to do it. And I'm basing this entirely on the fact that they both have very prominent cheekbones. Cillian Murphy as Sandman,
Of
and
course. Of course,
yeah,
we're all thinking it.
yeah, it's on everyone's lips. Who's going to be this Sandman character? I'm assuming he likes it. I'm assuming Cillian Murphy likes a pint. Fuck it, yeah, go for it. And then I panicked and put John Hamm as Tommy Dreamer. So there, that's should have started with those and built up to the better picks. But here we are. That's it ran out of steam like ECW, I suppose.
The extreme cinematic universe. I'm in. Sign me up. This would be fantastic. You're way more creative than I was. I just went for things that would amuse me, and just be funny and actually make the actors really uncomfortable. I also had a role for Killian Murphy, not as out there maybe as the Sandman, but I want to see him act like Santino Marella. And like just like have to do
Wow.
things like yeah, exactly, and just have to kind of walk around and be silly, because again he's just such a talented serious actor that it would amuse me to see him acting the arse. And in the opposite way, Barry Keoghan's having a moment. I went very Irish with these picks. Barry Keoghan's having a moment now, and he's kind of having a moment as like even you've got Saltburn, obviously, but you have like obviously his award season kind of glow ups that he's been doing on the red carpet and stuff like that. And he's kind of established himself as a quirky personality. So I'd find it really funny if in the middle of this he had to play Lance Storm and just dial it way down and just like again, like
Barely has a pulse.
there's nothing to work with. But Barry Keoghan still has to be Barry Keoghan. These would amuse me. That's the kind of thing that I enjoy. Guys, we have a really packed show for you today. We have a lot to discuss. The Iron Claw is on the agenda. Madam Web, I'm going to give you a spoiler. I don't know about you, Tom, because we don't discuss it. Probably not going to discuss Madam Web in the movie of the month category, although who knows, maybe you can throw a curveball there, but we are going to discuss it. And we're going to be discussing our Oscar predictions as well as we're in that. But let's get right into it, Tom. Let's get started with our movie of the month. Let's play some music. I'm loving this segment, by the way, because as we covered, if you listen to us in January at the movies, or even if you didn't, we'll tell you now. We don't discuss this part of it. So we watch a lot of the same movies. We're both obsessive movie heads, and we don't know what the other has picked for the movie of the month. So there's one obviously that we talked about at the top of the show that I would say coming into February was a heavy favorite. But Tom, hit me with it. I'm dying to know. I've been dying all week as we've been getting ready for the show. What's your movie of the month?
My movie of the month came as a bit of a surprise because I knew very little about it going into it, and then it started getting a lot of awards buzz. It was definitely well warranted for me. It was American Fiction.
Hey, same snap.
Hey.
I love it.
So yeah, I mean, this is one where when it came to the nominees for Best Picture, I was like, oh, seen. Haven't seen that one. Been hearing a lot about it, but know nothing about it at the same time. And that's like the best way to experience one of these movies. And yeah, was not expecting it to be as comedic as it was, which was so amazing. It was like not just funny though; it felt like it had a lot to say. It was very incisive,
Yeah.
about kind of the role of African Americans in media and literature, and I thought that was really interesting, and how sometimes the idea of this character, having to kind of sell out his race to succeed is just really really interesting, and it becomes an absurdist comedy where he pushes it further and further out to the point where he's able to name his book after a swear word, which we'll keep it nice and clean for the moment, even though I'm definitely going to drop it later on. So again, I think it's also really cool that in this and past lives this year we have two first-time feature writer and directors making a film that is really well and above that status. I mean, this is so accomplished and finely crafted. I loved it, and I think it's definitely deserving of some of the writing accolades it's getting. I also just think like Jeffrey Wright is such an amazing actor in like everything you see him, but it always feels like people don't necessarily know what to do with him. Like it's like he can do comedy, he can do drama. What do we do with him? Supporting character. So here seeing him as like so front and center and having a character that had range, that he could be very serious and dramatic, but also quite comedic and light, was just a joy to watch him. I think it really is his best work. The fact that he got nominated for best actor in this is just outstanding, because really I think it's a movie that in another year could have easily been lost in the shuffle. Again, have to give props as well to his brother. I mean, Sterling K. Brown playing a character that is really just like, oh, I would hate if I knew that person in real life, but man, it's entertaining to watch from a distance. We all have family members like that. We're like, man, look at that. That's a hot mess over there. But aside from that, I just felt like it was a really well done film. It's kind of so understated in a lot of ways, but it is consistently funny. Like I laughed harder at this movie than I have at many of the comedies I've seen this year. And yeah, it's just kind of is impeccable. There's very few issues with it. The only problem I kind of had with it was the ending, which kind of reeked of that thing of, I don't know how we end this in a satisfactory way, so here's an ending. It's the whole Marge Simpson defense of, is this a happy ending or a sad ending? It's an ending, that's enough. It kind of felt like that, because it's like, is this the ending? Is this the ending? Oh, okay, we're going with that. Okay, that's actually it. I don't know. I mean, it worked as kind of an indictment on Hollywood to a certain degree, but I feel like that kind of got a bit too meta for its own good, and kind of felt a little bit shaky, because it's like, yeah, that's a good commentary on Hollywood, but also he just gave us an ending that's not really satisfying. But other than that, I thought it was genuinely one of the best films. I mean, again, I could easily see this being up on my top 10 this year. Hopefully it holds up to a rewatch, which I don't see why I wouldn't. But yeah, loved it across the board. Definitely a feel good and funny film in general, and yeah, one that had a lot to say as well, which is good to see.
Love it, because I was wondering when we came into this if anything was going to beat the Iron Claw, because I'd heard so much buzz about it before I'd obviously seen it. And this is my movie of the month as well. I came to this, and I'm going to be honest, like I was in a rare state when I go into the cinema of not being in the mood to go into the cinema. I look, this is why I do this show. This is why I have page 180, because I'm a cinema obsessive. It is my happy place. It is my peaceful place. Even if I'm watching, and we're going to discuss bad movies, I enjoy talking about it and I enjoy seeing them. So it was very strange of me to kind of go, because I booked the ticket and I knew I wanted to see it, but I'd had a weekend away and I was coming home and it was stressful just trying to travel back into Dublin and then travel back out to the cinema. And I just came in, I'm like, oh, I don't want to see this, but I'm gonna, because I kind of have to. It's up for the Oscars and I booked the ticket. And I sat there for the 2 hours with a smile on my face. It just perked me right up in what was a stressful night. And for me, there will and may be better movies, and maybe there already has been made this year, but I don't think of the movies that I love in terms of are they the best movie. When you have a movie that's your favorite movie, you don't care if it's number one on the IMDb 500. You don't care about that because you love it and it connects with you on that level because you just enjoyed it and had such a good time watching it. I'm not going to say anything crazy like this is my new favorite movie or anything like that, but for pure enjoyment purposes and pure surprise, and like you said, not knowing much about it and then going in and just being blown away, this I may not see a movie that I appreciated more than American Fiction this year. It is brilliant and it's going very, very under the radar over here. I don't
Yeah.
know many other people who've seen it. If you haven't seen it, guys, it's based on a 2001 novel, Erasure by Percival Everett. It's made by Cord Jefferson, who, like Tom said, was making his directorial debut. And it's kind of like the story essentially, as Tom kind of said, was about the expectation of Black artists to talk about Black culture and how they can't be accepted unless they're actually telling Black stories. And they're very kind of crude and obvious in doing that. And that's kind of what is part of its charm. And it kind of connected with me on a level because I say this about Irish stories so often. How many Irish movies do you see are about Irishness? Even if they're not, they kind of are. And the ones that aren't are like, they're kind of small releases, or they get kind of like, even if you think of on Colleen Kuhn, for me, one of the best movies that we had a couple of years ago, phenomenal movie, one of the best movies of the year, and just got looked over in the Oscars because it wasn't about. It did get a Best International Film nomination, but like it wasn't about Irishness. And then you had the Banshees of Inisherin, where you have a bunch of actors hamming it up and being tiddly eye, diddly eye, diddly eye, and acting in a way that international audiences like to receive Irishness. And that gets nominated for Best Picture instead, when it's, for me, by far an inferior movie. And I don't like that. And I was very happy to see movies like You Are Not My Mother rise because of that. Because it's like, why can't we just tell normal, good stories that aren't about Irishness? And that's kind of what this film is about, except with Black people and their experience and kind of Black artists. And Jeffrey Wright in the film is a struggling writer. He's had success in the past. He's lecturing in college, but he's kind of unfulfilled, and kind of the high expectations that he had based off his talent at the start of his career just aren't playing out. And he's just frustrated, and he's trying to, be a sci-fi novelist. Like, again, you have there's a scene in the movie where he goes into a bookstore and he's saying, "Oh, this is a sci-fi fantasy book. It should belong in that aisle, and you have it in Black culture." You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not a Black story. It's nothing to do with being Black, but he is Black. And I know sometimes, and I'm going to be honest here. And again, this is something that I feel a lot of people feel but can't say. I get quite fatigued at times, like around this time of year, where we have to watch one really heavy, depressing movie about racism. And that isn't to say that racism shouldn't be made a topic for movies, but a lot of them are the same time. And it's like, isn't it awful? Isn't it awful? It's horrible. And they can be quite draining to watch over and over again. This tackled racism in such, and not racism, but just like racial biases and the societal pressures of people to conform to stereotypes and so on. It tackled it in such a, it was nice to watch a movie that was likable and fun, that still tackled the issue head on, And it's like, again, I like these stories. I just want to see people get creative. It's like we talked about World War II stories in our January the movies, and how The Zone of Interest and One Life tackled it in very different, unique ways. Like One Life dared to be optimistic. Zone of Interest dared to have Auschwitz right there, but look in the other direction, And I liked stories being told in different ways and fresh ways, and that's what this does. It's phenomenal, and I loved the impact that it had on the audience of the screening that I was in.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if this is the same with you. A lot of the jokes people weren't sure for the first like half an hour. The jokes were hilarious, but people weren't sure if it was okay to laugh in a predominantly white audience.
I was going to say the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
because you walk, a lot of people, I'm guessing, were at the same experience as me, where they sat down and they didn't really know what they were getting to see. And you hear a movie like called American Fiction, and you're like, "What is this about?"
Mm.
And it was that kind of thing where it was like, "Is everyone else laughing as well?" Okay,
Yeah.
we're okay, okay, we're okay. And then by yeah, like a half hour in, everyone was like, "Okay, we're in this together. This knows exactly what it is, and that's why it works." Like,
Yeah, and again, there was that thing of again, and it's a movie that while it's very light and very enjoyable and very easy to watch, it challenges you in a way because it is at the start where I'm kind of, and that's why we all felt this way. It's not because again we have, and again, I'm not saying that no one does in the movie. I don't know, but like it's not, we weren't feeling uncomfortable because of racial biases or racist thoughts that we had. We were uncomfortable because we were like, is the movie challenging us? And if I laugh, am I laughing at, or I don't know what the line is here, but the movie then kind of is so crude. Like there's one thing where Jeffrey Wright is talking and he has to kind of ham it up as kind of a person who spent time in prison and is writing a harrowing kind of story about his life, and he's kind of saying Weeze lives in the ghetto and like it's just very crude and obvious kind of but it was so refreshing to kind of get that tackled in a way which hit home. And I haven't seen racism tackled in such a refreshing way, or racial biases, because it's not necessarily fully about racism, although a lot of the people in the movie just kind of want to push black artists over to one side, so there is an element of it in there. But I haven't seen the topic of race tackled in such a refreshing way since Get Out. And I'm like, okay, this is new, this is fresh, this is interesting, this is a new way of telling this story. Loved seeing Jeffrey Wright get his moment. I thought he was phenomenal in this. Again, very similar to what you said. He is so often a character actor, but he's such a
yeah,
fucking good character actor that we want to see. And I think for me, it was Westworld that I saw him in that I'm like, oh man, he's a leading man. He's got it. And it's great to see him do it, but in a way we're not used to seeing from Jeffrey Wright. It's great to see him like, oh no, he's fucking hilarious when he wants to be, because you get a tone for that if you ever see him in interviews. That's kind of his style. He is actually really charming and endearing. What I loved about this though was how it could hit the high notes here, um, without ever taking away the fun tone. Like it kind of catapults you by setting you up with humor to connect to the characters, and then just hitting you with a gut punch with one or two lines. But again, never letting you sit in the misery that a lot of movies about race do. It's not about that. It's about just acknowledging it. It's not about kind of torturing the audience into kind of feeling how horrible this is.
yeah.
Like
I think definitely this is an example of like when people are saying there's tonal whiplash in a movie. This is an example of how you balance it really well.
yeah.
Like there's a classic example of this is there's a scene where someone has died and they're emptying ashes into the sea. As you do, and straight away someone's like, "You can't be emptying ashes into the sea," and he's like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Like, there you go. Like again, sad moments. Oh, that was pretty funny, and again, kind of a really human moment there that you would be like,
Yes.
"Oh yeah, can you empty ashes into the ocean? I don't know. Do you need permits for that? I never thought of that before."
Yeah, but it's also like so much more than just a funny comedy, but it is very, very funny. Like if you look at some of the lines, my favorite line in here was, "White people think they want the truth, but they don't. They just want to feel absolved." Amazing, and it's just like that kind of like, and it is based on a novel, but you feel that kind of novel level of writing without it ever seeming hammed or unnatural. I want to give a shout out as well. You called it Sterling K. Brown. I also want to call out Moira Lucretia Taylor. They were, the character actors were brilliant in this. Everyone absolutely nailed it, but them in particular. I agree with what you say about the meta ending. It was like it almost tried to be too clever. I feel like I haven't read the book, but I feel like it probably would have worked better in the book because I saw
Yeah,
what they were going for. But again, it didn't hamper anything from me. It was just like, okay, the movie's being silly now, but it's allowed to be silly, so I'm okay with that. American Fiction, what a movie! Again, going very under the radar, guys. Treat yourself. If you want a good movie on a Saturday night, they'll make you think without ever making you feel like you're thinking. It's brilliant. It kind of ticks a lot of boxes. So, excellent, excellent stuff. Let's switch up and talk about some of the other movies you've seen, and let's go to the complete opposite end because we need to talk about Madame Web.
Oh, do we though? Do we really? Do we
Yes,
really though?
I want to. I'm dying for this. This is why I do this show and look forward to doing the show with you to make fun of awful
Gosh.
movies. Let's talk about Madame Web. What was your thoughts? It was not a good movie. It is not the movie of the month. It may in
Look,
fact be the worst movie of the
it's
year.
yeah. I'm like I have to sometimes give hard truths or bad news to people in work and jobs and things, and I'm going to go with the sandwich approach: positive, negative, positive. Okay, that's what I do now. And be rest assured, it's a shit sandwich. This sandwich approach. It's the good. Okay, and this isn't not even really good. Dakota Johnson. I thought she was funny in this. I don't think she was meant to be funny. She was really, really awkward, and her character was really unlikable. But I thought she was very watchable. There was one scene I liked where she tried to climb a wall like Spider-Man, and then realized that's not how this works. So that's good. Then we get to the shit. This could take a while. So yes, this is another example of Sony trying to make a Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man, which you can probably see the innate problem there. A Spider-Man movie, no Spider-Man. So that's kind of right away we're left with a movie, and this isn't even really a movie either. So I don't know what this is meant to be. Actually, I have Spider-Man behind me here. I'm just going to take that down. That's totally irrelevant here. But this is just a baffling decision in their continued quest to try and do something that Marvel will leave them kind of get away with. Like, they own the rights to Spider-Man, but they're trying not to upset the apple cart. And I've seen people say this is like a naughty superhero movie or a 90s superhero movie. And that's honestly just such a slap in the face because some of those movies are decent. This is like bafflingly bad. It kind of reminds me more of like when, they used to do it a lot more when like a superhero movie comes out and they make a prequel comic book. And it's like, I don't understand why people would read that because it sets up things that never really become apparent in the movie. It's totally irrelevant, generally unexciting, and really ignorable. And that sums up this film. Because it's like this whole movie, Madam Web, I guess I should explain it because no, people must know who Madam Web is. We all read a Spider-Man comic. And we're like, oh, Madam Web. Oh, I hope they make a movie about that blind old woman who can tell the time or tell the future or whatever. Like, ridiculous. But basically, Dakota Johnson, something happens to her where she's basically able to see into the future somewhat. And there's this character. Oh God, I have to say the line that's not in the movie where she thinks this man was in the jungle, or sorry, in the Amazon studying spiders with her mother before she died. Which, you know what, I wish they put that in the movie because that would have been at least somewhat entertaining. But yeah, there's this character who can also sort of sees the future in that he has dreams that 3 spider women are going to kill him. Which, first of all, let's just say, right, even if like this is going to happen, just imagine like here are 3 heroes. What are they doing? Oh, they're throwing a man to his death. Yeah, remember when Spider-Man was like, here you go, Green Goblin, pavement. Like, what the fuck? And then what's even weirder is we barely get an explanation of what this man does to make him evil. He's like, they're in the way of my plans. And it's like, what do you do again? Ezekiel Sims is his character. Basically in this he is surrogate Spider-Man. He's just Spider-Man. He goes onto the ceilings, but they're like, he's not Spider-Man, he's bad Spider-Man. Okay, that's great. Also, I should mention on a technical level, they seemingly ADR'd all his dialogue, which if you don't know what it means they replace his dialogue with something being recorded in the studio. And you would think, I wouldn't notice that. No, you really would. It's really weird. It never matches what the room he's in. He always sounds somewhat deeply echoey for some reason. And also, it's half the time you're not looking at his face. And sometimes, if you are looking at his face, his lips don't match what he's saying. It is the most amateurish thing I've seen in a major movie, like in years. Like, then we have the fact that, as I said, Spider-Woman, you're like, whoa, there's Spider-Woman in this. No, there's visions of them possibly being Spider-Woman at some point. It is like, if you've seen the Madam Web trailer, you've seen all the Spider-Woman footage, because the rest of this is them just going around in a taxi being like, we got to get away from this guy, but also kill this guy. Yeah.
But why were they in the taxi? Why were they in the taxi?
Like, there's too much. Don't look back. Don't look back. We can't explain everything that's wrong with this movie because we will genuinely be here for days. I don't understand do you know how many people have to be terrible at their job for this to have gotten to cinemas? Like, someone pitched it. Someone was like, yeah. Someone wrote it. No one stopped anyone at this point. Someone showed somebody a picture of Madam Web and they were like, yeah, Yeah, that's a movie. That's a tentpole film there. It tells you a lot that the marketing is basically hinged on look how hot this cast are.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the movie, that's the only like thing you're like, wow, they are really beautiful people. That's the only thing you'll ever take away from this movie. I aside from that, the only person I can imagine is like happy with this is Pepsi, who are like prominently featured throughout the movie. They have a role in the villain's demise, shall we say, in his downfall. Pepsi's right there for you. The choice of a new generation. Like what it I like it's baffling. And then what's even funnier is you're like, oh, this is nothing like Madam Web. And then I guess they had to be like, oh yeah, because the comic nerds will complain. So they haphazardly be like, oh, doesn't she look a bit more like Madam Web from the comics now? And you're like, yeah, but that's not a good thing because there's a reason no one has tried to make a Madam Web movie. It's again, I don't like. We've got another 2 of these Sony Spider-Man knockoff movies coming this year, Venom 3 and Kraven the Hunter. This is the one that made the least sense. It still makes the least sense now that we've seen the movie. And I'm just gonna before I freak out and just start crying after having reflected on this movie. I do want to say they really awkwardly try to connect it to Spider-Man because apparently they basically have said that Spider-Man culturally appropriated a tribe in the Amazon to become Spider-Man. Isn't that amazing? Didn't you love that? Hey, Spider-Man learned about this tribe in the Amazon. He's like, I can do that. Really odd choice. They also put his Uncle Ben in here. And you might say, oh, that's a spoiler. You know what? Don't watch this movie. This is the best way you can experience this movie. Not because I'm an amazing film reviewer, but because this is short and concise. They put Uncle Ben in this, and they have the balls to like be like, oh, do you know who that is? Oh, that's Uncle Ben. Where they're like, oh, do you know he's gonna love being an uncle because it's all fun and no responsibility. Hey, that's like the line he delivers to Spider-Man. Horrendous. Like whoever wrote this script should have just I don't even know what they should have taken away from them. Maybe they should just be thrown in a cage somewhere and just left there. But they also make a really crude nod to him being shot. Like they're driving in an ambulance and they're driving to Queens, like the most ham-fisted thing. And there's like a shooting. They're like, oh, there's a shooting, and someone goes, "What? You've never been shot at in Queens?" Oh, so yeah, say that's Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben, you've never been shot. That'll change. Oh, great. Thanks for that. Thanks for reminding us that Peter Parker's fucking uncle is going to get murdered. And yeah, I'm going to move on. I just want to say, okay. I want to make a plea because I'm sure you have a great listenership in this country. I know you've said in the past you love their politics. You said that off mic to me. I want to make a plea to North Korea. Okay. Last time Sony got too big for their boots. You guys hacked Sony Pictures and eventually they put Spider-Man back in the hands of Marvel. Now look, horrible dictatorship, authoritarian regime, human rights violations up the wazoo. We'll forgive that. Just do something. Get involved. Stop them. Be a good guy. You can stop this. I don't want to see Aunt May spy movie that they were going to make. I don't want to see, J. Jonah Jameson, the college years. I don't want to sound like J. Jonah Jameson either when I say I want pictures of Spider-Man. I want Spider-Man in my Spider-Man movie. Imagine. I don't want fucking Hypno Hustler, a disco guy that can hypnotize people with a guitar. Guess what? One of those movies is actually apparently going to happen. I'm not joking. And yeah, you know what? Hack them and do whatever you have to do. We won't ask any questions. We'll forgive you, whatever you do. Just get Spider-Man away from Sony before they take every minor character and put it up on the big screen. It feels like they're punishing us. Like they're like, you have to endure this or we're not going to make another animated Spider-Verse movie. Oh, do you like Spider-Man at the MCU? Well, you better go see Kraven the Hunter. Ridiculous. Nonsense. Oh, yeah, sorry. I forgot. I meant to have a sandwich approach. Positive. I like Adam Scott.
Yeah, I do. Like Adam Scott's pretty good. He's in this movie. Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, that's it. Oh, I'm just
imagining on the poster, like I one quote that I took from that is trying to imagine the poster where it says totally irrelevant and really ignorable.
The Guardian says total waste of time.
And do you know what though? So I've slightly different opinion of this movie. I'm not going to say it's good. It was god awful. But I don't mind bad movies. And I was actually pissed off at Morbius, not because I expected it to be a good movie, but because I went in for the shit show and it was rudely just boring. The one thing about this is it's not. It will inspire rants like the epic rant we've just had. And it just like there's times where I don't mind. I like being in a bad movie where at the end of it I just fucking laugh. I'm literally laughing at the movie. What was the movie that a couple of years ago? Sam from Game of Thrones was in it. It was about the moon falling. Was it just moon
Oh,
falling?
Moon! I think it was called Moonfall. Yeah,
Moonfall, yeah. Literally, like so what I say in the tin.
it's called
And
the
then
bus that couldn't slow down.
and it was like, quick, run over here. The moon will protect us. I love those moments where I just laugh out loud at how ridiculous these people are saying it. And again, like you say, movies are hard to make. There's so much involved, and like people have to work so hard to get to a level where they're making a movie for Sony in the Spider-Man universe that it's actually spectacular when something fails this badly. There are so many questions here. Like, what in Dakota Johnson's back catalog made me think she was this sassy girlo that they needed to pull off Cassie? This, apart from her not giving a single fuck in any interviews that she's doing about this movie, how did they look at like the moment that Sydney Sweeney is having, where she is almost universally accepted as the most beautiful woman in the world right now, okay? And think she needs to be a quiet, nerdy girl who wears a lot of jumpers, and that, like, the complete antithesis of Sydney Sweeney. Why is young Uncle Ben Adam Scott's Marvel role? Like, this is Matt Smith and Morbius levels of wastefulness, where it's like you could give him his own franchise. This is the guy from Severance. He could be the next Ant-Man style kind of comic lead hero. And again, like, I know it's Sony, not Marvel, but at the same time, like, once you're kind of casting one, you're kind of, it's
I
tough
was
to
going to
get
say you
recast
can't you
another.
can't blame you for being confused by that, because there's rumors going around the cast thought they were in the MCU as well.
Yeah, they just heard you want to do a Marvel movie. I have heard that. That's hilarious. Why did they not just cut and reshoot any of Ezekiel Sims' lines? There's a scene like, and the main thing that I think of when I try to answer all these is that this is a joke. Like, when you look at it, it's actually more likely they just were like, do you know what it'd be gas if we just all got together and made the worst movie ever and we tried for it? I genuinely think they are trolling us with this movie because it is that hard to get that many talented people together and flop so badly. Like, there's a scene, and again, kind of a spoiler, but who gives a shit? It's Madame Web, where one character shows us their powers, and it's basically like this, supposed to be this like Avengers Assemble scene, like duh, 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 duh. And the power is like they like evaporate from their own body and are compassionate. They basically just like break into multiple forms and go over to people like they're there. Like, how did
So I
nobody
think
go?
I think we should even go further and say, because I thought of that as well. That is the big climactic action
Yeah,
scene of your
that's
movie.
it.
Look
That's
at
your,
her helping people that are kind of in need, I guess.
but not even helping, just kind of going, it's gonna be all
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Madam Web is basically psychic Kevin McAllister here with like a little tiny bit of empathy. I
It's
don't
like
even
pull
know
yourself together.
how they explain the origin story. Like, most hero stories are really straightforward. They're either bit by a radioactive spider, their parents are murdered by a thief, the super serum to aid a war effort. I don't know what, I don't know how this happened or what happened. I don't know. And like, I don't like to kind of rag on bad CGI. Like, visual artists, they're underpaid enough by Hollywood as it is, and I'm okay just letting movies be movies. If it's bad, that's probably part of its charm or whatever, but this didn't even look like it was trying to be realistic. There were times where it's like there's just fireworks going off in the background and I don't know why. I'm like, why are there fireworks? That's not a bomb, that is a fucking sparkler, and I don't know what is happening that's supposed to make that happen. It feels like a really weak effort to kind of say, make a metaphor like emergency service workers are the real heroes among us. That feels like it was written by your cringy ma. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, no, that's not, stop, don't say it that way. That's not what superheroes are like. Stop. You're embarrassing me in front of the Spider-Man. It felt rushed to a deadline because Sony forgot they had to make a movie to renew the Spider-Man contract, and they got a cool sponsorship deal from Pepsi, like you were saying. So it's just cobbled together any old shite, and is maybe the most cynical and bad faith movie of the year. Would I watch it again though? Probably. If I got mates around, I'd probably watch this again because it's fucking hilariously bad.
I,
Awful,
I do
awful
need to
stuff.
see it with a more receptive audience, because there was only one time I laughed in the movie and no one else laughed. And I was like, oh man, this is like, there's a moment where she predicts someone's going to die, and the man's like, oh no, it's okay, I'm going to go anyway. And then In the background, really slowly, there's a car crash. It's the slowest car crash. There's no Michael Bay sparks, explosions, or any cars flipping over. It's just kind of like a dull thud. And she's like, no! And I burst my whole laughing at it. But everyone else was like, oh, that was serious. Okay,
She
okay.
okay? Like, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It was,
that was
it was,
gas.
it
Yeah.
was hilarious.
You know what's weird? I actually think you can make a good Madam Web movie. And I've got an
Okay,
idea, right?
okay,
Here's what you do. Madam Web realizes that Peter Parker's uncle is going to be killed.
all right.
And she really is conflicted and wants to help him, but then realizes that if she doesn't help him, Spider-Man never becomes Spider-Man.
Right.
So like there is something you could do, but this is like I don't even know what they didn't even try here. It's
Yeah.
just really weird. I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's bad.
let's spend less time with Madam Web.
Yeah, let's talk about something equally as fun to watch in the cinema. The Iron Claw.
The feel-good movie of February.
Yeah, well, like half of it is really feel good, and that's the thing. It's like, look, this is a movie that again got a lot of hype coming into. We're all looking forward to. Obviously, we're wrestling fans, and a lot of people listening are as well. So it's a really, really strong movie. It's a emotional roller coaster, obviously. Should it have been up for award contention and it kind of got snubbed everywhere? Yeah, I reckon it should. I'm not angry about that, but I get it. And I think Zac Efron in particular probably got screwed out of a Best Actor nomination for everything he put together for this. He was fantastic. I loved Jeremy Allen White being in this. I loved just seeing the guy from The Bear as a pro wrestler that we all know, Kerry Von Erich. I'd love to see him fleshed out a little bit more, if I'm being honest. Mike Von Erich probably felt more developed, and that's someone even wrestling fans don't know that much about. But I really loved Jeremy's loose cannon vibe. And I don't know how true to life that was of Kerry behind closed doors, but I wish we got more of that. He was brilliant. What I loved about this was like the highs and the lows. People are kind of talking about this like it's so bleak, it's so sad. And I'm like, do you know what though? Like Sean Durkin, the director, sets an almost kind of daydream memory scene of 1980s Texas wrestling where the future and the potential seem limitless. And what I loved about this was, especially in the first hour, it kind of unabashedly invites viewers to kind of fall in love with wrestling if they're not already. Like I loved a lot of the presentation around it. It flows like kind of the time it took to take us into the TV presentation of how it looks versus how it feels to be a fan there. The mid-match kind of graphics and sound and everything was excellent. Like at one stage you had the commentary fading out as Kevin recovers, and all we hear is the Sportatorium kind of cheering him on as the world comes back when he recovers, like, and that kind of build up and the hype. I loved like the fun Easter eggs they had, like Harley Race, the Freebirds, without ever really feeling like a lot of these things. I don't know if you saw the TV show Heels. A lot of these cameos and stuff like that can feel really forced. It's like, CM Punk, he's in our show. Look at that. That's amazing. But like, they didn't really overstuff that. Or Young Rock did the same as well, where they're like, Andre the Giant, am I right? They just kind of threw these away. And it's like, if you didn't watch wrestling, you don't care. Like you're not, it doesn't take you out at the moment. But if you do, you're like, well played, lads. That's class. And that's a really good presentation. The only dud performance of like kind of the cameo wrestlers for me was Aaron Dean Eisenberg as Ric Flair. I'm like, that is the most impersonated wrestler of all time. We all have a Flair impersonation, except for the guy who's playing Ric Flair in a movie. It was crazy. But like, I'm not gonna go too mad at it. There was a couple of things that I docked points for as far as wrestling goes. Like if there's a wrestling movie and you have to have a scene where it's like, actually, it's fake, but it's a real sport, and you have to like go through that expositional kind of boringness. Like the word heel is now part of our daily vernacular. Like even outside, it's part of mainstream vernacular. It's not, people know what wrestling is. They've seen the wrestler, they've seen all the other shows, they get it. So you don't need to have that kind of expositional dialogue. And never mind that, but there was another point in the movie where they got really confused with it, where again they just didn't know. It's like they forgot what they said about wrestling previously. Where they said it was fake earlier on, but then you have Fritz von Erich saying that you had to kick the shit out of Harley Race to get an NWA title match. And I'm like, you're trying to pretend it's real now. So you're just confused a little bit for the sake of drama. But that is nitpicking. I thought this was a really enjoyable movie. I got a lot out of it. Again, it is very bleak and it is unrelenting in the second half, but I thought it worked because of how effective the first half was. I thought that felt earned. And I thought, like, again, and there was an end line that they took from a Kevin Von Erich kind of documentary where he kind of spoke on a lot of these, and I won't say what it is because you really needed to hit you in the cinema, but it really did. Like that last line where, like, again, there's a point in the future and he's kind of reflecting, kind of looking at stuff going on. That last line killed me, and again, it felt earned. It felt amazing. Again, like it's a really good movie. But again, like I know a lot of people are saying this is like, and a lot of the people that I'm reading it would probably be more predisposed to like wrestling because I'm the guy who runs wrestling parties again. So like I get it that people are saying 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. There were some parts that like I didn't get because I'm like, it's a good story and it's an interesting story, but does it really have a moral? Like, what's the moral of the Iron Claw? Don't have brothers because they'll die. There's no other message here. I loved it. I really enjoyed this movie. I don't want to kind of rag on it, and I know I have picked out a few flaws, and I guess that's me just kind of explaining why it's not my favorite movie of the month. But I really enjoyed it. I got a lot from it, and I thought it was a really well made movie. But I'm not mad that it didn't get put up for awards. I think it's getting a lot of universal recognition. It's getting a lot of people a lot of acclaim, and that feels right. What were your thoughts about the Iron Claw?
Yeah, I think that you kind of hit on a lot of what I've been feeling about it as well. I've been kind of wrestling with it, no pun intended, since I saw it, how much I genuinely kind of like it or not. Like, I would say I like it, maybe not quite as much as you. And again, I've also been confused because, like, seeing people who are wrestlers and who are into wrestling being like, amazing film and this is the best film ever. And I'm like, is it though? I mean, I
Yeah.
kind of feel like, again, you probably are predisposed. It kind of feels like, when like episodes of a TV show are like set in Ireland and you're like, way, and then even it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if they're like, oh, wait a minute, they just spent like an hour calling us drunks. It kind of felt like that a little bit. Where for me, there's like a lot to like about it, and I think it's great that there is more wrestling stories on the big screen because I think it's something that kind of lends itself to cinema. But I don't know. There was things I really liked about it. There was things I kind of disliked about it, and I think it's interesting as well because I only talked to one person who hasn't, isn't a wrestling fan that didn't know the story before they saw the movie,
Mm.
and they really liked it. So I think that's kind of interesting because I think everyone else I know is like aware of the story, and anyone
Yeah.
that's mentioned it to me, I'm like, do you know the story? I'm like, don't look it up um, before you go to see it. I think the cast was great. Jeremy Allen White was excellent. I think Zac Efron was really good in as in the role of Kevin. It's like he naturally is a very, and if you ever see him interview, he's a very stoic person. He doesn't really emote a lot, and I think he would be kind of numb based on what he's gone through. And I think that's a tricky role, but I think it showed a lot of maturity and complexity of him as a performer.
Yeah.
Holt McCallany as Fritz was outstanding.
Yes.
I will say I think knowing enough about the character or the person, I guess it sounds like he got off a little bit easy. I think he's kind of a bit more of a stern like coach character in this, whereas in real life you hear stories of him, you're like, wow, he was just a fucking monster.
Yeah.
So possibly that could be taken against it. I did think the wrestling looked really good on screen, and yeah, the presentation of it, really good. There was clearly a lot of respect for the craft and for old school wrestling, especially. I thought the relationship between the brothers was really good, and I think that's why the first half of the film worked really, really well for me. I mean, they did leave a brother out entirely, but that's another point. Um, I thought there was one excellent scene, especially the montage. I mean, God, I know montages can be cheesy, but they like, have a montage of them like rising through the ranks to Tom Sawyer. That's just amazing. Like the whole movie is worth it just for that alone. And I liked the immediate ending. Again, you touched on the line of dialogue there that we won't say. That's kind of a paraphrase from it was either Dark Side of the Ring or the mini 30 for 30 they did
Yeah.
on Kevin Von Erich and the Von Erichs. That was a really powerful ending, I thought. But I did feel like the second half definitely kind of lost a bit of momentum. I think the pacing, it kind of just became relentless misery, to the point that it didn't almost feel like you had a chance to absorb what was happening. The sense of time kind of felt like it evaporated towards the end as well. And I think that's why a movie like this honestly could have been possibly better done as a TV show. I don't know.
Mm. Yeah.
But at the same point, I do think it was really good. There's a lot I liked about it. I didn't necessarily think the romance works all that well. And yeah, I mean, one of my notes as well is I just said Ric Flair, Jesus. I mean, I'm not shocked that they announced a Ric Flair movie recently because someone obviously saw that and was like, absolutely not. No, that's not happening. We need an actual depiction of Ric Flair. Um, but yeah, it was a bit long, overstuffed, but in general, I think it was really good. It's definitely worth a watch. And if you don't know much about the story of the Van Arks, I think that's probably the best way to go into this. But as a depiction of their story, I think it's about as good as you possibly could do, really, without it being an even bigger mess. So yeah, no, and I'm a fan of the director. Martha Marcelline is one of my favorite films of the last decade and a bit. So I'm delighted to see him kind of get a big chance with a film like this. So yeah, Sean Durkin did a great job, and yeah, definitely check out Darren Claw, I would say.
Yeah, it is worth checking out, especially if you're into it. But I do agree that when you know what happened, like if you don't know what happens, I can see that being a totally different experience because it's like
Yeah.
fucking hell, and
Yeah.
it's like yeah,
When you know what happens, it almost becomes like a checklist. You're like, oh yeah, that and that
yeah,
and that. Oh, and
yeah.
then
You literally are, yeah, and you're kind of, yeah, you are a bit immune to it. Yeah, that's very true. Um, I want to touch on a couple of things just before we get to our Oscar predictions really quickly. I want to talk about One Love, the Bob Marley story, which is one that I feel really felt like it should have worked and had everything in its favor. Um, but I got a really icky feeling watching this movie when I heard that it was produced by his son and the family were very heavily involved. And there's a lot of that these days where, you know, you either have the person themselves producing their own documentary or you have that. And I get why they would and I get why it works that way. But I feel what you end up getting is kind of a sanitized version where it's more an ad for this person than anything else. And I feel like that's kind of what it was. And that's a shame because it was very clear watching One Love that a lot of work went into this and a lot of care went into this. Like when you look at Kingsley Ben-adir, he may not have learned to sing. Like at one stage, you literally just hear him like, and he's singing outside for people who are watching, and it's very clearly the studio version of Redemption Song. And you're like, I know every beat, I know every high and low of that song because it's so well known. It's an iconic song, and it's just that. But he was convincing as Bob, and he put a lot of work in, especially around accents and stuff like that as well. And mannerisms were quite good as well. So again, a lot of people put work into this, but the problem for me was the scripting of this. It was just all over the place with Zach Baylin and disappointingly Sopranos writer Terrence Winter behind it. Like Bob, for example, I just found it such a strange angle to come from with him. He scripted as kind of high strung, jealous, and even violent at times without any real attempt to kind of examine and get into the shades of grey to make him that way. And it's like, this is a love letter to Bob Marley on one hand, but also you're showing a lot of his worst characteristics. I didn't know a lot of those things. Like I didn't know he was a womanizer who had kind of a second woman on the scene and they kind of just threw that in there. And I'm like,
yeah.
that might change how I feel about Bob Marley, which is strange because on one hand, you have the family endorsed ad for the guy that just is full of his tunes in a really crude way. Like at one stage, they're playing music like in the studio and jamming comes on. At one stage, he has an argument with his wife and No Woman No Cry comes on. But whatever, it's still good Bob Marley songs. And a lot of that is just that's kind of the problem with the movie. It's just all over the place a bit. Early on, we see Bob being shot, which is kind of a well-known story, but there's no real backstory as to why Jamaica's in political turmoil. I don't even know what Bob Marley's stance is on the whatever the issues were. I just know he was against the bad things. I'm like, I don't know. I think he's a hero. And again, like, don't get me wrong, it's not an awful movie. For me, scene by scene, it's interesting. You know what I mean? I'm interested in every scene, but when you try and weave it together, it's narratively just all over the place. And it's a biopic, I get that, and it's about a real person, and it's about a genius. And geniuses, especially, aren't clean cut people. You know, they're not distinctly good or distinctly bad. There is a shades of grey element there. They're complex. People are messy. They're complex. They're grey. But it also doesn't mean you should just kind of show us random scenes from their life and hope that it all just hits as one big presentation, because that's what this felt like. It just felt like several long music videos. And there are individual components that work, even if the pieces don't exactly fit together. And it at the end of the day, it I love Bob Marley. I've been listening to him ever since watching this movie, and it is a couple of hours of listening to absolute banger after banger after banger. So as movie experiences that don't work go, you could do a lot worse than this. It's not awful. It's just disappointing and average for me. But what were your own thoughts on One Love?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to music biopics in general, I'm often very nebulous. I mean, I don't know how that genre ever survived after Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, where it was like, oh yeah, everyone is like this. And it's interesting you're bringing up the whole kind of involvement of families and stuff because like next year we have Michael Jackson's movie, and I think like his son is playing him, and the whole estate is involved. And if there was ever an example of a person who needs a shades of grey element, like
Yeah.
and the only person I know that's ever been like involved in their biopic that was like, yeah, show it all was Elton John, and that was like no surprise, that was one of my favorites of all of them. I'm always very trepidatious talking about Bob Marley because someone once was like, I said instantly as like an 8-year-old, I'm a Bob Marley fan, and they said name 3 Bob Marley songs, and I totally froze. So as long as you don't ask me 3 Bob Marley songs, I'll be good. But aside from that, I knew nothing about Bob Marley the man really, or his life, aside from his death, and that was about it. And I'd be lying if I said I kind of felt like I got to know more about the man. I kind of got to know more about his surroundings a little bit.
You
I think
saw
that's
more.
what
You got to see
I
more
saw,
things
yeah.
happening.
I'm like, yeah, that's certainly more of Bob Marley than I've ever seen before. But like, yeah, I agree with what you said in that. I thought scenes were interesting. I liked, weirdly enough, I can't believe because normally I hate this thing in a movie of like the background of the origin scene. Like I found the scenes about his father very interesting, and his time back in Jamaica very interesting. I've also just like found the time frame of it so odd.
Yes,
Like
agreed.
where they started and where they ended it. Like they kind of build up as if like he's going to do a concert that's going to unite Jamaica. And then the movie's like, and here's how it actually happened. And you're like, well, that could have been the big triumphant moment. But okay. It also did find it very weird, like you said, that because I know people have been said, oh, they whitewashed the film. And I was like, I don't know enough about Bob Marley to know if they did whitewash it or not. And then it's like, oh, clearly he was dabbling with women all over the shop. And they like, you barely know it. Like if you looked away from the screen for like 2 seconds, you probably wouldn't realize that because it's literally just like, hey, the camera's lingering on that woman for 2 seconds. I wonder if something's happening there. Kingsley Ben-adir was decent. Again, I think he's an excellent actor, and I think he definitely looked the part. I think the writing of Bob Marley kind of let him down. Bob Marley, from even like barely knowing Bob Marley, even from the footage they show over the end credits, he's clearly a very charismatic individual. I don't think they always got that across in this. Sometimes he definitely feels like over his head, or very. I don't actually. I want to point out another thing that really like made me laugh in this movie, and it's I don't know what the name of the trope is. I'm sure it's on TV tropes. I'm going to call it tighty whities, and it is the fact that they always have these characters in movies that are about a black experience or an artist, and it's always like the Rastafarian will say something very insightful and clever, and then you have these record executives be like, well, Bob, you gotta put on the concert, Bob.
Yes.
Like one person literally says it sometimes. I don't get it. We gotta sell albums, or what? Oh, my favorite one was there's on about violence, and then Bob Marley says something very prophetic or whatever, and then one of them guys goes, you don't understand. His guitar is his gun. And I was like, oh, Jesus. How can you write that and be happy with it? Like, oh, God. People don't speak like that.
Yeah.
I did think as well that Shanna Lynch was great. I thought she was really good in this as Rita Marley. But aside from that, I mean, yeah, the songs were good. It felt like very, like sometimes biopics have the thing where they like link the what's happening in the movie to the songs. And sometimes it'll be really bad, like, like sometimes, like for example, if this didn't happen in Rocket Man, but if someone would be like, you really got to get out there and Rocket Man, say that again. We don't have that, thankfully. It's just kind of feels really random because it's just the recording of the album Exodus mostly. And that's why I found the time span very different. I also think they didn't really do a good job of making his death make sense. And I know his death kind of doesn't necessarily make sense anyway, but I know it was mostly due to his Rastafarian beliefs. The movie is just kind of like, yeah, whatever. He could have got a cut off his toe that he had cancer in, and he'd probably be grand. And they're just like, Bob Marley's kind of like, it'll be fine. He's grand. And I'm like, you're not going to give any justification for this, but no, apparently not.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was kind of paint by numbers. It's a pleasant enough watch. I feel like, again, there's some musicians that we have to give them the biopic treatment at some point. And this is what we get. And we probably won't get another Bob Marley movie for decades now. And this doesn't really feel like it is the complete story. Yeah. It just feels kind of by the numbers. And that's a shame.
And I do feel there were so many, and like you said, there was so like everything they referred to in the credits. I'm like, that's a better movie. That's a better movie. Yeah. That's a better movie. And I'm just like, what the hell? What was this movie? Yeah, and I agree. I feel and yeah, again, it was fine. It was grand, but I feel like there's a great movie in here, and that's really frustrating to watch too. So, speaking of potentially great movies that could be disastrous, let's talk about Fantastic Four, because we got the casting and the release date throughout the course of February. We'll just touch on it real quick anyway. July 25th, 2025. You've got Pedro Pascal playing Reed Richards. You've got Vanessa Kirby playing Sue Storm. You've got Joseph Quinn playing the Human Torch. You've got ebon-moss Backrack playing Ben Grimm. You've got Javier Bardem is rumored to play the main villain Galactus, and you've got Daniel Craig also rumored for a Doctor Doom cameo. It's directed by Matt Shakman, who directed in WandaVision, the one good episode of season 7 of Game of Thrones, and Always Sunny. So there's a lot of great things that I like there, and it's written by Josh Friedman, who wrote Avatar: Way of Water and War of the Worlds, and Jeff Kaplan. So far, it's been teased that it's going to be set in the early 60s based off the artwork that's been released. You have Ben Grimm reading Life magazine with Lyndon Johnson. What are your thoughts on all of this? How's this settling with you? Is this something you're looking forward to? Obviously, the MCU has had a torturous time with a couple of big wins in there, but like narratively, people are ready to shit on the MCU. Is this something that's likely to bring it back to life, or how are you feeling about this?
The MCU kind of has one ace up their sleeve, and I think it's Fantastic Four. Like the X-Men is going to help them a lot, but there has been good X-Men movies. There's never been a great Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah.
So this is their chance to say, like, if they get this wrong, they'll just have to kind of hang their head in shame, because everyone's always been like, oh, but if Marvel got a hold of them, and now they have a hold of them. So this is kind of what they have to nail. And I think the cast has done pretty well. And I think I kind of have the same opinion as a lot of the internet. It seems like, generally speaking, Vanessa Kirby, everyone's like, perfect.
Yeah.
Ebon-moss Backrack, I
Amazing.
totally butchered his name there. That's okay. Yeah, perfect. Like, I mean, I'm going to be picturing him shouting cousin regardless until I see him in the CGI suit or whatever, you know. But it comes down to Joseph Quinn, and it comes down to Pedro Pascal. And I would say my only concern with Pedro Pascal isn't his performance or his look. I mean, I'd rather see, Reed Richards with a beard than Pedro Pascal without a beard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just feel somehow uncomfortable if he doesn't have a beard. I've gotten used to that look.
Yeah.
He is a little bit old for Reed Richards, but I think he'll be a good choice. I think he can pull it off. He's charismatic. That's what you want for Reed Richards. And I think he's got a lot of, he can easily do drama, as we saw in The Last of Us. So I think he's a good choice. Joseph Quinn is one I don't understand. People are basically like, he's the guy in Stranger Things, as if one role defines an actor.
Yeah.
And then there's also the other side of the internet, which is like, oh, Johnny Storm used to be a hot himbo. Now he looks like this. And I'm like, I don't know. Joseph Quinn seems kind of normal. I mean, like, geez, if Joseph Quinn isn't good looking enough for people, like, I don't know what that says about the rest of us. But I mean, look, I've only seen him in Stranger Things as well. So he seems to be a decent enough actor. He's in the new Gladiator movie, so if Ridley Scott's do something in him, I'm guessing he's a decent enough actor. Give the kid a chance. I say the kid, he's probably like older than me. Oh, he's slightly younger than me. That's okay. He's a kid, nice. That young boy. I think it's a good cast. Again, possibly a few question marks over Reed and Johnny for me, but in general, I think this could totally work, and I think it does. I really hope that they actually are going 60s with this initially, at least. And I feel like at this point, the way they tease it in the artwork, people are expecting it to be, and they'll almost be disappointed if it's not. But I think this is definitely a shot in the arm that the MCU needs right now. And I think this is exactly what could be that turns the MCU around a little bit. Yeah. So fingers crossed it is.
A lot of really exciting names in front of and behind the cameras that I share. Like, again, the one thing, I'm not worried about Pedro Pascal because I've never seen him in a bad role. I've never seen Pedro Pascal shit the bed. Like, even everything he's been, even Wonder Woman, he was the only amazing thing about that 1979. The only amazing thing about that movie. Like, he again, the unbearable weight of massive talent. Like, again, phenomenal stuff from him. He's fantastic in everything that I've seen him in. And then you've got obviously the big hitters as well. I'm very okay with the 60s setting, and I'd be very okay with this if this was just a totally adjacent big time storyline to the MCU timeline. I do imagine they'll weave it in, but I'd be very okay if they just stayed in the 60s, did their own thing. This is what old school superheroes in the MCU are like, and these are the adventures. I think we learned from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, one of the MCU's recent wins, that Marvel movies can still really work in the way that made us fall in love with Marvel movies to begin with, if they stop thinking about the big picture, the multiverse, how it's all going to play together into a big Avengers movie. And look, again, I'm sure this will play into something, and whatever, that's fine, but save that for the post credit scene. Just focus on being fun. Focus on giving us a fun time at the movies, and that's all you have to do, and then we're happy. So far so good with this, but again, you have to take any MCU news these days with a touch of trepidation, because there is a feeling. And again, I think only Deadpool being incredible can right the ship. But there is just that nervousness that we have with it, because it has been a mediocre few years. Let's talk before we wrap up about some Oscar predictions. Obviously on March 10th, we won't speak before then. We kind of had a rant about the things that got snubbed and everything last month, or the discourse. So we're going to stick strictly to predictions. So Tom, if you want to kind of rattle off with whatever way you want to take this, what are you kind of expecting for Oscar night?
I have my predictions for the big six, but I also have a bit of a proposition. I thought of this after watching Madam Web, right?
Okay.
I that was a terrible film, so I'm thinking like, what if there was a way that I could not watch this film? So I want to make a bet. Whoever
Right.
gets more predictions correct is able to get the other person to watch a bad movie and skip out on it themselves.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know,
Okay.
Craven the Hunter, it could skip out on that. God knows what else is coming down the pipeline. I could just say, sure, you can review that one. I'm just going to sit in silence.
All right. Okay. Okay. I would love if this backfired and like Craven the Hunter was actually the
I,
best movie
oh,
of all time. But
God,
now
yeah.
you're committed and you can't see it because that's been the
Yeah, I
bet.
take it back.
Okay.
About that.
No, no, no. Let's do it. I'm all good for this.
Locked
Yeah,
in. All
let's
right.
do
Let's go.
it.
Let's put on our big boy pants. All right. Okay. So I have got some fairly, I would say, I have some boring nomination
Yeah.
choices here. I think it's going to be a pretty predictable Oscars. I think we're looking at an Oppenheimer not sweep, but I think it's going to get a lot of the major awards. It's up for a lot of stuff. I think it's winning Best Picture. I think Nolan is going to get it. I think it's just kind of feels like it's his moment when you look at the other people in that category. It's like, they're not going to give it to Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon. He's already got an Oscar for Best Director before, so it's like, who else are you going to give it to? Yorgos. I don't think people like Poor Things enough for that. As much as I love it, it's just a little bit too weird. They're never going to give it to Justin Triet and Jonathan Glazer's Zone of Interest. I think it's just a little bit odd
Yeah.
for what they're looking for. So I think Oppenheimer is the clear winner there. Best actor, I mean, it looks like it looks like Cillian Murphy's name is on it already, really. I feel bad because I think in a lesser year, Paul Giamatti, and I think it would be a
Yeah.
deserving win. But I don't think anyone else stands chance. Certainly, I hope Bradley Cooper doesn't win. If Bradley Cooper wins, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with everything. I'd be furious. Best actress. This is the one that I'm conflicted on the most, because I'd love if Emma Stone won it, but I think that they've given Emma Stone Oscars in the past. It's like, it's tough. I looking at the other nominees, I think it only comes down between her and Lily Gladstone, and I think it's going to be Lily Gladstone. Because I think they want to give something to Killers of the Flower Moon, and she gave a good performance, and I think Emma Stone has kind of been, has had her moments a few times. Supporting actor, God, it would be great if it would be great if Gosling won, wouldn't it? Or Mark Ruffalo. I will say best supporting actor is a banger of a category this year.
It's
It's
great.
really tough.
Yeah.
But I do think that like they want to give the nod to Robert Downey Jr. for
Yeah.
giving a role that we're like, oh yeah, he's not just Iron Man. So I think it's going to be him, and I think best supporting actress is going to go to Davine Joy Randolph. I think the best supporting actress category is pretty weak, to be honest, and I think it's just going to go to her because of that. America Ferrera is there because she gave a good monologue in Barbie, and Jodie Foster is there for that film that doesn't exist. Didn't see The Color Purple. Danielle Brooks, maybe she's good in it. Emily Blunt is just there because they were like, everything Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
She was fine in it, like, but I mean, it feel basically like they're going like, hey, well done, Christopher Nolan, you did a semi-competent female character for a change. So yeah, I'm going to say it's Davine Joy Randolph, but yeah, it seems like it's pretty much going to be very Oppenheimer heavy in my mind, in the top six.
I agree. I found a massive flaw in your bet plan, and I love the bet.
Oh.
But I have it's not going to work because we've got the same top six. We've
I
got
will change it for the sake of
identical,
a bet. I need my taste.
identical.
I will change it. I will change my taste just because we keep this bet going. Okay, I'm going to change it to Emma Stone then.
Okay, okay, right, grand. Okay, we have action. We have
Come
action.
on!
I
Everything I
think
said, everything I take it back. She deserves to win. She's the best choice. You should win.
I feel really confident that I'm going to win now. I think, yeah, like again, I'm going for Oppenheimer Best Picture. I want Anatomy of a Fall. Like if I rank kind of the pictures, like that was my second favorite movie of the year. Oppenheimer, I think it's great. I get it what they're going for. Like they're trying to capitalize on the Barbenheimer love. Christopher Nolan kind of again, they want to celebrate the success of cinema, but they don't want to give Barbie the credit, and Oppenheimer was released on the same day and was almost as successful in a way. So I get what they're going for there. But Anatomy of a Fall for me was like the best movie on this list. American Fiction actually ran me close. I think if I had more time to sit with it, I may actually just say but I don't think it's going to win. My show just should not be there. John Glazer, I'd love to see win Best Director just because of how different and ballsy the Zone of Interest was, and I thought he nailed it. And we kind of discussed that last month. If you want to kind of check that out, I would actually love to see Jeffrey Wright win Best Actor. But again, I agree. Cillian Murphy, it's his to lose. Lily Gladstone, it's her year as far as Best Actress goes. I'd actually like to see Carey Mulligan. I thought she was incredible in Maestro. I'd love to see her get it done. I don't think she's going to. I don't think that has a single chance of happening. It would be really funny though, because Bradley Cooper was so like he's not going to win that, but imagine like his co-star won it. That'd be fucking hilarious. You get to see
I've got
Bradley
another rant in the
Cooper.
chamber for Bradley Cooper. Like
You've
I
got
literally I ranted on this on another podcast for about 5 minutes about how much Bradley Cooper's Oscar campaign has pissed me off. So
but it'd be
don't bring it up.
so funny just sitting there and watching him actually have to be pissed off at his co-star winning and his movie
Did
winning,
you see the
but
video
him
of him
not
sitting
winning.
with Bernstein's family? He's sitting with the Leonard Bernstein's like kids, and he's like, they're like, "Do you miss him?" And he's like, "Yeah, I miss him." And he starts like crying, and he's like, "They're like, you never met the man." it's like, what's wrong with you? You're so fake and cringe.
It's
Stop,
so
stop! For the
cringe.
love of
It's
God.
so
Ugh.
cringe. But I really like. Actually, I really want Carey Mulligan to win now. But no, it's Lily Gladstone's here. Robert Downey Jr. Yeah, all award ceremonies up to this have told us it's his year. I would fucking love it, and it would bring back so much faith in the Oscars if Ryan Gosling managed to pull this out of the bag. It'd be phenomenal, but I don't think it's going to happen. And Davine Joy Randolph, I know when we were talking about the holdovers last month, I wasn't crazy about her performance. As crazy as everyone else is. It's a really good performance, indisputably. But she is the best of this bunch. As for a couple others, I just want to talk through best original screenplay. I'd like to see Past Lives win. I think that is the pick of the bunch, but I'm very okay. I think it's going to be the holdovers, and I'm very okay with the holdovers getting some love as well. Best adapted screenplay, I would again Barbie. I really want to see Barbie get some like proper love here. I think they're going to be relegated to getting the likes of best song. Although it could cancel each other out in the voting because there's two songs nominated. But Oppenheimer's going to win this. Best animated feature, I think I'm very okay with Hayao Miyazaki getting recognition here, and The Boy and the Heron. I think that's what's going to happen. For me, of the five, even though it's probably the least cool and it has a troubling backstory, and I don't think it's going to win, Across the Spider-Verse was the best of these movies, and if we are awarding the best, that should be it for me. And best international feature, I actually didn't call out. We didn't get a chance to discuss. I love Society of the Snow. It is phenomenal. Check it out. It's on Netflix. It's a remake of the movie Alive. That a lot of people of my generation will just remember as the movie where they all eat each other. But it is fantastic. It's so graphic. It's so intense. It's so visceral, but it's also told with love as well. Really, really good story. I'd be very okay with that winning, but The Zone of Interest for me was a better movie. I think it's going to win, and I want it to win as well. So there are our Oscar picks. Check it out. Anyway, I'm staying up. I'm booking the day off work the next day. I love a good Oscar ceremony. Like, not that I love it because it's very often not entertaining or it enrages me, but I love following along the discourse, and I really hope there's something wild. Like, I hope they let Will Smith back and he slaps someone again. And it's like, how does the same shit happen twice? Or something crazy. Anyway, and we're due something crazy. Like, to be fair, every couple of years the Oscars do something wild. So fingers crossed this is the year. That's all the time we have this month on February at the movies. But before we go, big March in the cinema. Tom, what's the movie you're most looking forward to?
Man, it's tough. It feels like March is like the start of blockbuster season already when you look at what's coming out. Like we have the new Ghostbusters, the new Godzilla versus Kong. But for me, it's the one that's coming out the soonest. It's coming out on Friday, June Chapter 2. I think that's what everyone is thinking, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Same for me. Yeah, look, that is the movie. It could be the cinematic event of the year, which feels like it's peaking so early, but like all accounts are pointing to this being good, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. On top of that, I want to pick something else apart from Dune. So I'm going to go for Love Lies Bleeding. You've got Kirsten Stewart, you've got Katie O'Brien, you've got Anna Baryshnikov. Yeah, I said it right. Dave Franco and Ed Harris. It's an A24 movie. It looks like it could be of the kind of Beau is Afraid. This is actually a bit mental ilk, which I love those A24 movies. Even if they're shit, they're always interesting. It could be amazing. It could be a hot mess. They're the kind of movies that I love. I love going into the cinema, excited about what am I going to see here. This could work, it could not work, and this just has all the vibes and an amazing cast. So I'm looking forward to that. That's out the 8th of March. Tom, before we go, you're everywhere at the moment. So what are you doing apart from breaking your nose at wrestling shows? By the way.
So if I'm getting my ass kicked, you can find me on YouTube. I'm going to plug what I plugged last time because I've not done it yet, but I will be done it. It's coming out next week. My own award ceremony where I'm previewing every film that's coming out in 2024. And when I say every film, I mean more than any other film preview in the world. Over 100 films, some of which have now been out because it's going to be March. But most of them are not out. It's an award show where I give awards to films I haven't seen yet. So that's, nice mix of a film preview. But yeah, the Culties, the 6th annual Culties, very expansive. It's well worth checking out because you're going to get to see the latest posters. I'm literally keeping it up to date. This will be until the time it's edited. Like I've got trailers for stuff that's just dropping the day before, ready to go. You can see the trailers. It's just well worth checking out. If you want to know what's coming to cinemas, you're going to get the most up to date version next week. And I have not said that date anywhere. My goodness. Exclusive.
Okay. Exclusive. Getting a world exclusive release date here. Thank you, Tom. Always a pleasure, guys. Check out Pop Go Pod if you haven't subscribed already for more of Tom's rantings and ravings. The link's going to be in the show notes as well, so you can get it nice and easy from wherever you're listening to this podcast. Next time, or over the next month on page 180, we're going to start covering our first weekly show. We're going to be doing Invincible as soon as that comes back. I'm going to try Rally the Troops, and we're going to see if we can get a wrestling show sorted, an Asso Blow show sorted at some time. And also, I want to talk about Celebrity Big Brother. That's coming back. I'm really back on the Big Brother train, as you would have heard if you were listening last year. So we'll see if we can get a catch-up sorted for that. Anyway, Tom, we'll be chatting for March at the movies. Cannot wait. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Until next time, though, this has been February at the movies on the Page 180 Network. And if you spent less time spying on me, you could probably write a dozen more novels that people buy at airports with their neck pillows and Cheez-Its.